deep down we often have a really strong gut feel for where we want to go, but there's so many complicating layers on top of that you have to wade through sometimes to actually be able to go with that gut feel.
Ellyse, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Alex. I'm really looking forward to it.
I suspect this is good for you because you're in New Zealand at the moment and you're in quarantine, right? So it gives you something to do.
Yeah, you're totally right there. Been in quarantine for the last 12 days, I think. So yeah, it's nice to chat to someone from the outside world, firstly, and good to have something to do as well. Although I must admit, I'm here with the team that I play for, and we've got a series coming up over here. So we've sort of been quite lucky in the sense that we still get to go out and train most days and get a bit of fresh air and at least interact with other people at various times. So it's not all bad.
How long are you allowed out for?
Training sort of like 10 till 2 most days. So yeah, it's not a bad stint. What's that, 4 hours?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Are there windows in your room? Like, can you get any fresh air there?
Yeah, I've got a big window that I've sort of had cracked open the whole time. And it's actually been getting quite chilly at night. So I've sort of been walking around my room with like a big puffer jacket on and a beanie, but the fresh air is really nice. And it's such a beautiful country, New Zealand. So we're in Christchurch and it's pretty quiet and pretty peaceful in a way too. I've actually been really productive in a lot of respects with just general life admin and staying on top of like my routine in the morning and stuff because there hasn't been too many other distractions. So that's been good.
Yeah, I guess in some ways it's kind of a blessing to allow you to focus on some of those things that perhaps get missed in normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, no, it's given me a little bit of, I suppose, pause for thought once I'm out of quarantine because in a weird way I've sort of actually established a little routine that I've really enjoyed and I've actually noticed it's probably made quite a difference just in how I'm feeling generally from a physical perspective at training each day because I've got a little bit more time and far less distractions to not have a second stretch for the day or do some mobility exercises or actually just sleep a full 8+ hours because there's not much else to do. So it's kind of like being the perfect preparation to play sport. As I said, it probably just misses a bit of balance with interacting with the outside world.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's the kind of protocol that you guys are going through at the moment? I mean, you're training 10 till 2, but then stretching a couple of times a day. What are you kind of getting done?
Yeah, well, I think all of us are a little bit different. I know there's been some premium viewing on Netflix and other streaming services for some of the girls, but I probably on an individual basis get a little bit restless and like itchy feet if I'm sitting around too much during the day especially. So yeah, in the end, I've actually kind of managed to get a good little routine going, sort of get up reasonably early and have a stretch and do some mobility and then have brekkie before we head off to training and then come back and we'll have some lunch and then have another stretch and maybe do a bit of a bike conditioning session or something because I've got an exercise bike in my room, which we've all been supplied with, although yeah, it's quite funny though because it's not the smoothest operating spin bike I've ever come across, and it makes like these horrific noises because I think it needs a bit of WD-40, so you can hear when anyone's on it, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so that's been good, and then sort of just wind down for the evening, and got a couple of candles in my room and just little things to make it feel a bit peaceful, which is nice.
Yeah, nice. Last year I was in quarantine in Brisbane. I moved up here and we packed our water filter into our case. So like when we got into the room, we opened up our case and set the water filter up and put it on the shower head. It's like the important stuff, you know?
Yeah, but that's it, right? I think any little touches that make you feel, like you're at home or in spaces that you like being in, it's pretty good for keeping you centered, I think. So, quarantine aside, I think whenever I'm traveling, I always like to have little things like candles and like my speaker and things like that to kind of keep me grounded.
Yeah, nice. So you've travelled the world playing cricket for Australia and various other sports, and I imagine you've had some intense training sessions. But I'm curious to know, what's the sweatiest you've ever been?
Besides like any public speaking event.
Okay.
I'm pretty nervous. I think, definitely a few tours to like India or Malaysia and really hot, humid places like that. When you're playing cricket and you're sort of in the middle of the day and you got to wear all the various bits of equipment as well that come along with playing the sport. There's been some pretty sweaty days over there for sure.
Have you ever like dropped the ball because your hands are too sweaty, or is that just something that would happen if you're on stage?
No, I can't. I wish I could blame it on having sweaty hands when I've dropped the ball, but I actually have this weird routine, especially when I'm bowling, because if your hands get a bit sweaty, I sort of rub my hands in the dirt between every ball just to put a bit of like grip on my fingers. So not that sweaty that I've dropped the ball, but and sometimes it sort of gets in your eye and it's hard to see when you look up and stuff.
Yeah, true. You've achieved a lot of success over your career. Some of the headlines are pretty fascinating. And it really just interests me seeing and getting to talk to super successful people like yourself, because, you're in New Zealand now, you're training 4 hours a day with the rest of the team, and you're doing that part of it. However, something separates you and other successful people, like from the ultra successful people to people who are just doing well. And I'm curious, I read a book last year called The Talent Code by Daniel Boyle, and he talks about these certain areas or places where you go in the world where they just churn out world-class athletes or world-class chess players. And he talked about the idea that it's actually the way that they train and the way that they learn, which actually allows them to be super competent. That idea that we're not really born with it, right? We're a product of our environment, and if we're in the right environment and if we follow, certain processes, that we can achieve amazing things. Did you kind of consciously have a process when you were younger to, I guess, get you to where you are now? Did you always have that as a goal, or was it more just like, I like playing cricket and soccer's pretty good, I'll give it a go?
I think to answer the second part of that question first, as a kid, I just, like most Aussie kids probably, grew up, with a pretty sporty family. Mum and dad both played a lot of sport when they were younger. I've got an older brother who was like, into sport, loved being outdoors, and I'd say 90% of our free time we spent, in the backyard, down at the local park, throwing balls, catching balls, kicking balls, jumping, climbing, like just all the normal things that, I think kids do. And I certainly had a natural affinity to the outdoors, but also was really influenced by, my family life. And that just translated into a love for sport and being active. And, I played lots of different sports when I was a kid, sort of had a go at everything. But innately I gravitated very much towards like team sports. I used to absolutely dread going to little athletics as a kid, or the swimming carnival, or playing tennis by myself, because I found it a really intimidating environment, sort of being on your own doing things. Whereas I love playing team sports and interacting with other people, and I guess working towards a common goal. So I just played lots and lots of it. I never really, I guess, cognitively had a goal to play sport professionally or for Australia. But I think, and I suppose maybe into the second part of that question, is the one thing that I've always loved, and it's probably motivated me more than anything, is the continual quest to be able to do things better, and the challenge of continuing to evolve and I guess in a way chase perfection. Albeit I think that's pretty futile because you probably never ever get there. But in any one moment in time, there might be a specific goal that's going to take you a little bit closer to achieving perfection. I think that always lures me in. And so, it gives you a means to train hard or to work hard, but also keep questioning how you're doing things, why you're doing them, and is there a different way, or probably more importantly, is there a better way to do it?
Is that an internal process that you work through, or do you work closely with your team on those kind of greater goals and improvements?
I think it's both. The great thing about a team is everyone's so different and everyone operates so differently. And, I probably think that in a way too, the best way to contribute to a team from a performance point of view is to do absolutely everything you can to be as good as you can, because ultimately I suppose then you're contributing the best that you can to the team, and in a way you've got full control over that. I kind of always think no one can work harder for you than you. That's just the fact of it. So there's that element to it, and I really love that side of it. I love the drive of kind of keep pushing, and then it's a little bit more, I suppose, of an art within a team of then everyone being on the same page in one way or another, and working towards a goal, and I guess a path of development as a group. But that's a lot more loose, I think, and you don't have as much control over that, certainly as an individual, but even as a group, you sort of got to continually adapt and adjust to the dynamics, and know that things they're probably much harder to plan out. I think there's two elements, and when you can combine the two really well, I think that's when you've got a really successful team, I suppose, and the results are good.
Mm-hmm. And where does the current female Australian cricket team sit at the moment in terms of those things? Are you guys at the precipice of achieving some great heights, or is there a lot of work to be done?
No, we've been really fortunate, I suppose, throughout the history of Australian women's cricket, very similar to the men's team. We've had a lot of success over the years, and it is in a lot of respects our national sport, and there's some great history there and a lot of wonderful players, and so there's sort of that. And then interestingly, I think it's the most amazing time in women's sporting history, particularly in Australia, which has sort of promoted this incredible growth and development of the sport, both for the athletes and teams, but also for fans and engagement in the sport itself. So for us, we've sort of been really fortunate to continue to play pretty well, and we've had some really great resources and investment sort of put into the team, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, and we've got a great current crop of players who have sort of been together for a while. So we've sort of done some really cool things, and that's been great to be a part of that. And I think more excitingly though is probably this sort of emphasis on hopefully taking things a bit further, given the opportunity that we've got at the minute.
Yeah, the explosion of female sport over the last 3 years, 4 years, it's just been amazing.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, across lots of sports too. And I think on a global front, like Australia is very much at the forefront of that. And yeah, it's just been wonderful. I think the opportunity that it's given to so many female athletes across lots of different spaces has been incredible. And yeah, I don't think it's probably going to slow down just yet. I think there's some really great opportunities for that to continue to grow and develop. But yeah, in terms of a time to be involved, I think, you know, the current group of players just feel very fortunate that we're around at the moment, that's for sure.
I feel like you're a bit of a symbol in women's sport as well. As you know, your success has been amazing, and it's at the exact right time, like you said, you know, to really show like, hey, it's possible. Women can kick ass, oftentimes more than the blokes.
We do okay. I think, yeah, the timing of things. Yeah, the sport's a lot about that. Yeah, there's a timing and luck element, and then I guess there's the other element, which is sort of like working hard and doing what you can when you get a good opportunity. But yeah, I mean, you sort of like we've obviously maintained contact with like past players, and you know, I've played with quite a lot of them, given I've been around for a little while, and you know, comparatively where the team's at, and you know what we're sort of afforded in terms of, you know, wages and opportunities to play around the world and tour and stay in great hotels and fly in nice planes and all those kinds of things is incredible. And, you know, that was very distinctly different 10 years ago. And, you know, just by pure luck is it that it's our turn to have a go at it. But, yeah, it's been very, very cool.
If we jump back a little bit, how did you come to the decision of choosing cricket in the end, right? Because you had a decision to make all those years ago, and it's not a small decision either. And when I was getting to know you, you know, I really resonated with that, because I see times in my life when like there's a big decision that needs to be made, and oftentimes in life we can postpone that decision, or maybe not, you know, not make that decision in time, and just kind of, I guess, beat around the bush, for lack of a better expression. How did you kind of work your way through that and choose cricket in the end?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, it was a great decision to have, firstly, like having to choose, you know, between two sports that I absolutely love playing. And I guess the reason it sort of became a decision where I had to only play one is because both had developed enough to a point where, you know, the time commitment and, you know, also like, I guess the financial sort of remuneration or contract side of things was at a point where it very much was a full-time pursuit rather than, you know, part-time or semi-professional type thing. So, yeah, that was probably like 5 or 6 years into me playing both sports at, you know, at an elite level that sort of came about. And I suppose, you know, through that progress, I was really aware that at some point it was going to reach that crossroad, I suppose. And, you know, I always saw that as like a really exciting thing, because it meant that at some point I was going to be, well, I and you know, all my teammates were going to be full-time professional athletes. And, you know, that as a prospect, you know, is really exciting and something that I'd always wanted to do. So to, you know, get that chance to devote yourself and all your energy and output entirely into one sport and trying to see how far you can go with it was always going to be a great second option, I guess, to playing both sports. So yeah, as I said, it was a really good decision to have to make in a lot of ways. It wasn't a sad one. It was still hard, but I guess fortunately too, it sort of played out naturally for me, where cricket evolved a little bit quicker and became full-time first. I think for whatever reason, from like both an athletic but also like personal or personality point of view, I just always felt a little bit more at home at cricket. So yeah, it sort of wasn't a huge decision in the end. It wasn't sort of just like one day that was it. I called it and I never turned up at soccer again. It was just more so it just sort of naturally progressed to spending more and more time at cricket to the point where it just wasn't feasible to spend any time at soccer. And that's where I just played the one sport. But yeah, to your point about decision making and sitting on the fence, I think, the decisions are very varied and some are a lot harder than others. But I think deep down we often have a really strong gut feel for where we want to go, but there's so many complicating layers on top of that you have to wade through sometimes to actually be able to go with that gut feel or follow your heart, so to speak. But yeah, it's not always, you can fret over it a lot, or it can be quite an anxious process trying to work through that, and it's not always that fun.
Yeah, I find oftentimes you have your gut feeling, but then you feel like you need to do the due diligence. So you write the lists out and you talk to everyone about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm probably a serial delayer of making most decisions in my life. And sometimes that inhibits things, but other times I think, well, once you actually go through that process and, as you say, do your due diligence, then ultimately you're much more comfortable with the decision you make, and then you can really sort of, crack on with whatever it is that you've decided as well.
Yeah, that's right. There's a process of letting go of what the other option was, and once you kind of really have that freedom and more time to pursue whatever it is you've chosen.
Totally.
Do you ever have a gut feel when you're deciding where to bowl the ball next? Pretty sure this is where it needs to go, but my training says I need to go there.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an intuitive part of sport, and I guess that real almost that art v science argument as well. And on good days, you just kind of get a really good feel for it. And it's almost like you're not thinking, your body's just moving the way it should be, and you're just there for the ride. And then other days it's a real strain, and you sort of go through this painstaking process of trying to make the right call and go the right way and compete against whoever's down the other end. So there's probably a bit of a scale between those two. So those two feelings, and just depends.
Are there any batswomen that you're bowling towards anything, but you're a bit scared of, this is really good?
There's plenty. Yeah, and on any given day, if it's someone's day, I think it's normally a pretty daunting task.
I imagine it's the same when you're batting, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally. And it's nice to do both in the game, I think. Because at least you get a shot at both. If one doesn't come off, you can sort of rely on the other one to hopefully make a contribution.
I suspect that wasn't your intention as to both batting and bowling. In case you cock one up, you can do it.
No, probably not. It's a bit of a byproduct of doing both. You sort of have that as something in your back pocket as a bit of safety. But no, I think I just like being involved and don't really like sitting down too much. So you've got to do both in cricket, otherwise you can spend a bit of time sitting down.
True that. So what does your prep look like on game day, mentally and physically? How do you get yourself ready?
Well, it probably depends a little bit on the time of the match and what format. But if we're playing sort of later in the evening or afternoon, I normally sort of get up and have a good stretch and then go for a walk and just get outdoors and in the fresh air, and then come back and have brekkie and hang out for a bit, and then at some point I'll grab my notebook and write down just a few thoughts about the game and the way up. You kind of want things to pan out, or little reminders of different things that you've done during the week at training to make sure that you take that into the game, and I suppose also little confidence boosters as well, in terms of just reminding yourself of the prep that you've done and what you can can do out in the field. So I'll sort of do that, and then probably have another meal a bit later in the afternoon. Probably like, if we've got a game at 7, I might have like a later lunch at 3 or 4, and then head to the ground and sort of see what happens from there, I suppose.
Yeah, do you purposely try and eat a few hours beforehand so you're not on a full stomach?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I kind of like to try and listen as much as I can to what I suppose my body's telling me to, like if I'm hungry or not. But yeah, like I kind of like to have a meal not too close to the game, just so like, I know it's probably completely wrong, but like just so that your body's like settled and I suppose digested that food, and then can focus all its attention and energy onto whatever physical task you're doing too.
No, I don't think that's completely wrong. I think that's complete sense. Digestion takes more energy than anything else, right? Yeah. Gosh, just the other day I ate a bunch of grapes and then went for a jog, and I was like, oh, this is just a horrible idea.
Grapes are the worst. They I think because there's so much fluid in them, they just sit terribly, don't they?
Yeah, they were sitting well and truly. They were almost coming out. But no, that's interesting. And what I'm curious, like, what are you typically eating in the afternoon in prep for a game?
Yeah, it probably depends a little bit on what I've had for brekkie, but yeah, like it's a bit of like fresh sort of veggies and salad. Maybe with a slice or two of bread, like some sourdough and like some avocado, and sort of stuff to fill me up a bit, so I feel satiated before the game, and then maybe even like just like a small smoothie or something as well, and then I feel like that or almost always gets me through a whole game, so I don't feel like I need to eat again.
Are there in the team, are there some people with some interesting choices of food and diet? Yeah, I mean, it always intrigues me. I think food is such a personal thing, and it's amazing how much the conversation on the bench, particularly at cricket, turns to food, and how much people talk about it. But yeah, there is some really different thoughts about it. I think these days though, there's a lot of work and education that sort of occurs with a dietitian or nutritionist, around training prep and matches, and even the food that's supplied if you want to eat at the ground is pretty like stringent in terms of aiding performance. So there's nothing too silly. Like I've definitely done the old school peanut butter and banana on bread quite a lot before games, and there's a few fans of that. Sometimes that's lunch at cricket too if we're playing a full day match. So yeah, and then there's a few big coffee drinkers and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing too wacky. I mean, gone are the days when I was a kid there used to be like lasagna at lunchtime just before you go out on the ground. You just feel so sick having eaten that or something like that. Yeah, that's I remember I used to play soccer, and especially every now and then there'd be some guy on the other team and it's half time and he's like having a cigarette. I'm like, gosh, I must be in the wrong division here, or there's something going on, because that's just not on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Peanut butter and bananas. That's always a winner. Even in CrossFit, it's like people are always eating that.
It's just got all the essentials, doesn't it? And it's pretty dense from an energy requirement point of view. So, and it tastes good. It's easy to stomach when you're feeling a bit nervous. So
absolutely, yeah. That's the most essential thing, is that it tastes amazing.
Yeah.
I like that. And then after a game, you've been bowling, you've been batting, you're a bit sore. What's the recovery look like?
Yeah, my feelings on recovery have sort of evolved a lot over time. Like obviously ice baths get spoken about a lot. For me, unless it's a really hot day and like I know that my internal sort of core temp has been really raised, I actually like probably prefer not to do an ice bath. It normally leaves me feeling a little bit worse rather than better. But if it's been a really hot day, they're always available at the ground. I like to sort of just after a game really just sit in the change room and take it all in, whether it's been good or bad, and not worry too much about recovery practices. And then once I get in the car on the way home or on the bus if we're on tour, and then get back to my room or back home, that's probably where I like to have a bit of a stretch. When we're overseas or away, if the hotel's got like a pool or definitely a sauna, I'll jump in that, because that always helps me sleep a little bit better and just feel a little bit calmer and settled again. And then like definitely having some food that I enjoy before I go to bed makes a big difference. And yeah, pretty similar at home. And fortunately I've got a sauna at home too, so I normally jump in that and just decompress everything.
Yeah, nice. I've heard saunas are pretty good. That's cool. And interesting about the ice baths, there seems to be a bit of a theme with yourself that you really are quite intuitive and listen to your body about what to eat or how to kind of recover. Is that something that you, I guess, focus on to really just tune in and see what you need instead of thinking?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely been a little bit of a deliberate, I guess, practice. It's really easy, particularly as a elite athlete or professional athlete, to have a lot of information and theories or science thrown at you and given at you to really like I guess help is the main thing. But I think the thing is that there's sort of like this whole art element to sport too, and individualization. And like probably when I was younger, those things, like I'd really pay a lot of attention to them and try and follow protocols to the T, and that probably was the right thing at that age and really worked for me. But I think the older I've gotten, the more that I've sort of experienced things and been around, like you sort of start realizing and just picking up things that really work for you, and then other things that probably aren't as effective, and you really just use up a bit of time and energy trying to focus on getting done, or put a bit too much emphasis on, and then can cause anxiety or whatnot if you can't do it the way that you wanted to. So I think going back to just like really listening to yourself and trusting like the way that you feel about things as being the ultimate guide to what's best has really worked for me. And that's certainly been influenced and informed over a period of time by trying lots of different things and having professionals help. But then I guess now I'm at a stage where doing what I feel really makes a difference is kind of where I put all my time and energy.
Yeah, I love that. I totally relate to that too. I remember when I started getting healthy, I was, okay, here's the protocol. I'm going to do this. I got to get my morning routines right. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to meditate, and then I'm going to have a sauna, and then I'm going to go for a run. And like if one of those things falls down, it's like,
yeah.
It's just, it ends up being quite stressful. However, I think through those experiences, you learn what's right for you and what kind of sits well and what doesn't sit well. It's like reading, right? You might read, I don't know, 50 books a year or something. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20. But from whatever you read, you take little things here and there. You perhaps don't take on the full philosophy of what it is that the author is trying to say.
Yeah.
You implement those things and you kind of go about it like that. So I appreciate that. You talked about, you've mentioned a couple of times about the art in sport and balancing that with, I guess, the science and the strategy perhaps. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you, I guess, flow that into your work essentially?
Yeah. Well, I really like that word flow, because I think, it's got a few different meanings in sport, but like to me, like that kind of state where you're able to just like move intuitively and I guess use your body the way that it's telling you to, and just feel like everything's smooth, and non-effort is, is the ultimate goal, I guess, when you're an athlete. But, I think, it's so unique to everyone. Everyone moves a little bit differently. Everyone, thinks very differently. There's so many different ways of arriving at the same outcome in sport. And particularly in sports like cricket or soccer, where there's a skill involved in the game and executing that with, a ball or a bat or whatever. It's not just, run 100 meters straight or, do a lap and that kind of stuff. So, I think having that kind of idea of being informed and sort of, some of the basic principles of the sport and, some of the science and research and various things that have been done for that, I think are great informants of different directions to go. But then the way that you actually adopt that to yourself is very much an art. It's not something that you can contextualize or study and put down in a textbook or a journal article with scientific figures behind it. It's just a feel, and takes a long time, and I think that changes over time too. But to me, like when you've got a really good balance of both those things, that's when you're probably going in the right direction, and you see everything that's in front of you, and you have a really great understanding of your body and the game, and you can match I guess the way that you need to perform something or execute something to exactly what's in front of you in the task, rather than, I guess, going back to rote learned concepts or ideas.
Yeah. I guess that's the beauty of sport, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Everyone does it differently. Even in athletics, when a 100 meters runner, like, there's very different types of 100-meter runners if you break it down. Like, a short, stocky guy that's explosive out of the blocks and then, tries to hold on for dear life at the back end. And then someone like Usain Bolt, who's maybe not as quick out of the blocks, but just gathers speed as he goes. Even that is completely different game plan or tactical race, and then completely different physical attributes and means of training. So I really like that about sports. What makes it so fascinating.
Do you find it easy to get into that flow state when you're on the ground, to really just, I think about it in terms of those 4 steps of learning, which I've talked about before. It's like unconsciously incompetent, and then consciously incompetent, and then consciously competent, and then unconsciously competent. You get to that point where you're just flowing. It's happening, which generally takes a lot of time and experience. Do you find it easy to get into that state when you're on the ground?
Yeah, I think you waver in and out of it. Like even with various skills of the game, like you might master it for a while and everything's just working really well and you don't have to think about it and you can execute it. And then I know something sort of kinks into your game and it sort of unsettles that flow, and then you've got to go back to the drawing board and work through that problem or that little technical deficiency that you've developed and iron that out, and then sort of goes back into that flow state again. And like that's the beauty of it. It's also like maddening at times, but yeah, so it keeps you on your toes, I suppose. And on really rare days where it just all comes together and everything's moving perfectly across everything that you're trying to do, they're the days that you savor a little bit more.
Would you say you're a bit of a perfectionist, Ellyse?
Yeah, in things that I really care about, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. I totally resonate with that too. It's like it can be better. It can be improved. How do you, from my experience, when I'm like that with things, sometimes I've set myself up for perhaps disappointment or failure. How do you kind of handle those tougher times of defeat or loss or just not achieving what it is you'd set out to do?
Yeah, well, I think obviously immediately those things completely excuse my language, completely suck. Like and sort of just dealing with that initial emotion is is always quite acute and not particularly enjoyable. But once you're sort of through that phase, I think there's always opportunity, and you learn a lot more often when you're not successful. You have a bit of a lesson handed to you, because it makes you stop and realize like where you're sort of falling down a little bit or not quite going as well as you could be, or where you can really improve and actually, address something by spending more time and energy on it. And ultimately I think, in sport at least, those times or those learnings always make you a better player down the track. And there's always something down the track with sport. Like it doesn't just stop. There's always another goal or another competition or something else to look forward to. So you just got to keep charging forward with that stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's having that perspective of there's always something else, and maybe it brings up something in you that you're like, I haven't quite addressed that. Yeah. Can you think back to any hard times where, maybe you've had some losses and how you've kind of come out of those and where your focus kind of went in those moments?
Actually, we lost a semi-final of a World Cup in 2016. 2017 in the UK. And it's the first time our team hadn't made a final for a while, and we're sort of favourites to be successful in the comp. And we just had a really poor day, and the other team had a really great day. And a lot of it sort of came out that we're just a bit timid and not like I suppose aggressive enough in our style of play and asserting ourselves enough on the game. And that was certainly, feeling that I had in the way that I was playing, particularly batting. And it sort of, forced us all to go away and address that and figure out both physically and mentally what the barriers were to actually really asserting ourselves on situations and being really front foot positive. So, that's probably from a playing point of view the biggest lesson that I've had, and really been able to use some disappointment to go forward with stuff. But I think even on a smaller scale, every time you get out in a cricket game, there's a reason why you got out. And so looking at that and addressing that and training the next day is both frustrating, but also great, because it gives you purpose, and the next time that you go into a game, someone's got to come up with something new because you've sort of combated that, or whatever it may be.
Did you find when you went out in 2017 onto the field that I remember sometimes going out to play a game of soccer, and before the game, you have a great warm-up, everyone's in the zone and this is the strategy, whatever. And then you go out onto the field and it's I don't know what happened, but something's different. And then it just kind of stays like that for the whole game. And then you look back and you're like, guys, what happened? Was it that sort of experience?
I can't, to be honest with you, I have a complete distrust of warm-ups, because I don't think they're at all reflective of what happens in a game. I do think I remember sort of a few different things leading into that match over the course of the week where we're just pretty flat at training, or there's just sort of a few signs that we weren't maybe functioning as well as we could be, mainly on the field. There wasn't really any discontent or anything off the field, but just a sense of not intentional complacency, but just complacency and not really an edge to the way that we were doing things, which I think you need at that level, particularly in competitions or tournaments where people are, one slip and you're kind of out because the opposition's always out to get you. So, that was probably what I noticed. And I think the minute you sort of take the foot off the accelerator as a group, that's when you're really susceptible to being beaten.
Yeah, that's like life.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the idea of luck. Do you find luck plays a big part in your success and the team's success in sport?
No, I think luck is always there. It's just an element, and it's more so than what you do with that. So to me, like timing and luck are probably two things that you can't control too much, but you can absolutely control the opportunity that presents and making the most of that. And I think at some point everyone gets lucky, so to speak, in their chosen field, and it's just recognizing that opportunity and going with it with, full steam ahead and making the absolute most of it and not sitting back and being passive about it. That is the key part of it.
Yeah, it's not what happens to us, it's how we act, based on what happens to us, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I totally resonate with that. What are some of the challenges that face women's sport at the moment, or is it all good news?
Look, by and large, it's a really positive, I guess, industry to be a part of at the moment, and yeah, there's tremendous opportunity there. I think it's growing incredibly fast. It's sort of becoming more and more part of the public landscape, and people are more cognizant of it and want to be a part of it, want to be fans, want to watch, want to come along to games. More and more young girls want to play sport and be involved, and I guess eventually aim to be a professional athlete. And I think the other thing that is such a great thing about it at the moment is that it's got such a positive contribution to society attached to it. Like, I think by and large, every story about women's sport is a really positive one. It's been presented really well, and you come across so many genuine, I guess, for choice of a better word, untainted athletes that really love what they're doing but haven't got caught in like the grind of being in a bit of a professional bubble where they're always under scrutiny and maybe a little bit distrusting of the media or the public. So it just sits in this really nice space at the moment, and it's great to be a part of it. But it's also, as I said, really exciting to know how much further down that path it can go of development and become even bigger and I guess more impactful.
Are there challenges, like in terms of pathways from those green athletes, like you said, to be able to get into professional women's sport, that perhaps men don't have to deal with, or is that pretty even?
Yeah, I think that's really starting to dissipate now, and like you just look at all the professional competitions that have now sprung up, from AFLW to NRLW, Aussie Women's Sevens stuff, obviously cricket and soccer, hockey, netball. There's so many great avenues for female athletes that I don't think there's so many barriers as they used to be. And even at a community or local level, there's lots of all girls competitions now in various sports, and a real emphasis by sporting organisations too to make sure that they're catering for 50% of the population, because I think they've realised how important that investment is for the future of the sport too.
Do you feel like you have an important role in furthering that message?
I think our team does feel like that a bit. I mean, in a way, like we're sort of the shop front for it, so there's it's a really great part of the job, really, to be fair. And not that it's exactly a job, but like getting to meet young boys and girls when they come along to matches or at clinics, or knowing that they're watching the games or following specific players and teams and really enjoying it, and it's adding to their entertainment or to their lives is great. And I think that for us it's just making sure that that's always a positive enhancement, and hopefully it impacts more and more people being a part of it.
Hopefully it doesn't add any additional pressure to you guys doing well.
No, I think it's just a nice feeling, and you always feel supported, which is great.
You guys are over in New Zealand at the moment. Tell me a little bit more about what that's for. And
Yeah, sure. We've just got a series against New Zealand, 3 T20 matches and 3 one-day internationals, and it's the first time we've played in, I think, as a team for over 180 days or something like that. So it's been a long time. Particularly during summer, normally we're playing pretty regularly, and we've had a number of tours cancelled and various other things kind of happen like everyone has with COVID. So essentially, yeah, it was sort of like New Zealand was the only option we had to play a series against another international team, and so it's been great to come over. We've had 12 days so far of 14 in quarantine, but yeah, as we spoke about earlier, still being able to get out and train has been a real saving grace. And then once we get out of here on the weekend, we play the next day up in Hamilton, and then that series sort of goes for the next 2 weeks or so, and so it's kind of nice and pretty exciting to be back and competing again.
How are you feeling about where the team's at the moment? Are you going to be competitive?
I think we will. We normally always like to be competitive. In a lot of ways, it's been great prep for us because we've trained a lot, and girls really relish the opportunity to be out training and out doing something different. So that's been great. And I think just like always playing against Kiwis, it's a great battle. There's a proper good rivalry there. So we'll make the most of that as well.
Yeah, nice. What are the COVID protocols like? Do you need to get tested like all the time, given that you can't go out of quarantine and doing those things?
We've had 4 tests. So I actually had the last one today, hopefully. Not too many. We've got like a temperature check every morning, but only 4 swabs across the time, and just really strict with like wearing masks and making sure that we social distance and we're away from anyone who's not quarantining as well. Is really important. So actually, hopefully there's been a lot of chat because I've had a lot of time to listen to the news over here about the bubbles sort of starting up at some point soon between Australia and New Zealand, both ways. And I think that'd be great for both countries. But we've been really well looked after, and relatively speaking, it's been a pretty easy 12 days so far. So it's been all right.
Yeah, I feel like there's only a certain amount of swabs up the nose that one can do.
Yeah. And it's funny, like we all compare every time because it's normally been a different tester each time. Like, they were a bit rough that time. They went really high, or actually, no, they were fine. That one didn't hurt. And you always brace yourself though.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. That's the world we live in at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you've got some commitments, even though you're in quarantine. You've got some things to get to. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. If people want to learn more about you or follow you or just learn more about cricket, how can they do that?
Sure. I've got social media, and it's just at Ellyse Perry across all different platforms, or a website, just ellyseperry.com. So please reach out if you feel the need.
Awesome. I think you're doing some amazing things. Well, you definitely, that goes without saying. I don't need to repeat that. You're doing some amazing things, and I think what you stand for in the sport is a really beautiful thing. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the good message. Keep smiling, and hopefully keep getting some Kiwis out over the next.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.